Hey everybody, Josh here. Welcome to the R-Rated Show. And I've been thinking about whether or not, for a couple of days, whether or not I want to make this video because I didn't want to bring any attention to this drama if I didn't need to. Let me get my mic over here a little bit. But at the same time, you know, I'd like to talk about some newsworthy things, the topical things. I am a huge horror fan, and I love Joe Bob Briggs. But apparently Joe Bob Briggs stepped in a big pile of duty on Twitter the other day and caught some heat. This was actually, I believe, on Thanksgiving. Made a tweet that I don't think was intended with any sort of malice, because I mean, I think we all kind of know that Joe Bob is a pretty mild-mannered guy and a rational thinker, and he does his rants, but he doesn't intend to rain on anybody's parade. But I think that he made a tweet that was probably left a little bit too open for interpretation, and it just caused up swirled up a shitstorm on Twitter. And I was kind of watching it unfold, thinking, man, it's like, I always kind of thought of horror as a genre of film that was a little less full of itself, a little less politically activated, a little less, I don't know, like judgmental. And I will say that for the most part, all the fans of Joe Bob, people who follow Joe Bob, took this either at its face value for the way he intended it and were supportive, or they maybe politely disagreed and made a very well put point, or just said, well, I don't agree with you, but here's the reason why, and engaged in a conversation. But then you always get that little, well, not little so much lately on Twitter, but you always get that demographic of nasty, mean-spirited people who go on the attack and smell blood in the water and take an opportunity over something very simple on Thanksgiving, no less. Thanksgiving, when we're supposed to appreciate the people in our life. And I do appreciate Joe Bob because he does a great job, and I've been watching him for like 30 years. He's a great, fun, accessible film critic in the horror and B-minus movie genre specifically, but the man knows what he's talking about. And he travels the country, travels the world talking about films. So I tend to give him a little bit more credit. I give him credit where credit's due for understanding the filmmaking world and films in general. But these people decided to attack him, and they wrote some nasty things. And I just really felt like that was terrible and unwarranted and cold-blooded, honestly. And I'm just shocked that it happens in a community where it's mostly very supportive horror fans. Why are these people following Joe Bob if they're not? I mean, it's like I'm saying, it's okay to disagree if he makes a point that you don't agree with. But that being said, why do the fangs come out? And I think some people, they just can't help it. They need that dopamine hit. But let's just take a look at what happened. And this is a biased view. I'm just picking out very specific things, showing the ugly side, mainly because I want to shed a light on how sometimes things can go astray on Twitter and how people, good, innocent people with well intentions, can get attacked. And mainly just to defend Joe Bob. Honestly, I think I haven't seen anybody really come out with a video talking about what happened and trying to defend him. But essentially, here's the tweet down here at the bottom. I highlighted it in red. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. It says, this is where the whole thing stemmed from, okay? It says, what I love about directors from the 70s and 80s is that they had no political axe to grind, no message, no social justification for horror. It was just, get a load of this great story. I don't want to be told how to watch a movie. So, when I read that, my interpretation of that is essentially, it's a comparative statement. I think obviously something's been stirring around in his brain with the way things, modern cinema is taking a route, a very political, progressive left liberal route lately in cinema and even in horror movies about gender politics and you know, sexual orientation, you know, groups, classes that have been seen as marginalized, essentially, you know, people of color, etc. What's really floating around in the political zeitgeist right now, and it's obviously creeping into film and cinema. And I think what he was talking about was a more simpler time when, you know, these writers and directors and even producers would make films, you know, that were really just about the character and the story first. And if they had an agenda in terms of politics in the writing, then they would just trust that the audience would pick up on it or understand the metaphor, recognize the metaphor, and that it was just really about making the film first. And then, you know, there was maybe a shadow of a political statement behind it. You know, I mean, there was plenty of politics in films. There always has been. That's my personal opinion. And even in horror, there was definitely political commentary. But I think what he's saying is that it wasn't really like held out in front of the creative aspects of the film to the audience to say, hey, look, we're doing this. You need to pay attention because of this or that. I mean, there's been a lot of horror films, honestly, lately. One of them even won an Oscar because I think, I mean, were we really judging that movie based on its merits creatively, or were we judging it based off some political environment that we're in right now, or conversation that's going on, or what was the motivations for that film winning, you know? And you know, maybe it did deserve to win. You know, a lot of people think so, and I'm glad it won. You know, and it's opened up doors. But what I'm saying is he's speaking to a simpler time of when films were really just about these, you know, the forefront creative aspects. You know, the directing and the story and the acting, things of that nature, and they just let the political leanings of whatever was in the script just sort of percolate down into the viewer's mind, and it wasn't just thrusted in their face. And honestly, I think the problem is that we've gotten so much of it in today's filmmaking landscape, and really it's permeated in every aspect of our lives right now. I mean, there's a big political debate going on. There's a culture war happening. You know, this country's very polarized politically, you know, and no matter what your leaning is, you have to admit that there is a big divide. And because there's a lot of liberal producers and creatives in Hollywood, they're using that medium to voice their political opinions and essentially throw it in the face of their audience. And I'm sure some of them are doing it with the best intentions. Some are doing it out of spite because Trump won the election. Who knows what their motivations are? I'm sure there's a broad spectrum, but basically what's happening is us as the audience are being bombarded with it. And I think what he's speaking to here, you know, when he's looking at the remake of Black Christmas, which is projecting a certain message and its promotional materials, he's just saying, I just miss those days. I miss those days when it was more simplistic, and we, the audience, were left to figure out and ponder what those messages may be and leave it open for some interpretation. And nowadays, there's really no interpretation. It's just told to the audience what you're supposed to believe, what the director or the writer wants you to think. And so that's the tweet. And that started it all. And essentially, what started happening was a barrage of some mean-spirited tweets in here. And I redacted all the names of the people who responded in this way because this isn't some personal thing. This is just what happened. And It's all there if you want to go to the thread and look and find out for yourself, but it's not personal. I don't know these people, and I'm not trying to call anybody out specifically. I'm just showing the tweets that I saw here that seemed they seemed very malicious in nature. This person says at the top here, laugh out loud, what are you talking about? Have you ever even seen a movie? And I mean, this is just like, this right here is obviously very sarcastic, trying to jib Joe Bob a little bit, rib him a little bit. And, it gets worse from here. Essentially, they just keep going down the rabbit hole. I think once they smell blood in the water, they start piling on. That's a real weird way to say you don't understand horror. Because I could never imagine in a million years ever saying to Joe Bob, even online, much less to his face, that you don't understand horror. The man's been analyzing horror for 40 years, and we don't have to agree with every opinion that he has, okay? We don't. Every person is allowed to have their opinion. You see, here's the thing, is that Joe Bob, I mean, when he did his last drive-in on Shudder, when we all watched that show with bated breath faithfully for 12 or 13 hours, or it was a long marathon, however long it was. And he would do segments, his little rants. And he said a few things during that show, that program, that I didn't necessarily politically, agree with. That I would say that we, would disagree on, that we would butt heads on. But it didn't really taint my opinion about Joe Bob. I mean, the man has his own life experiences, his own opinions about things, and he's allowed to have his own political opinions. And, it might not even be political or something I disagree with him about. It might be something completely unrelated to politics that we would disagree on. But the thing is that that's what human beings do. Human beings, we have diverse minds and different upbringings and different backgrounds and different, different places that we've been in and things that we experienced. And, so you have to learn to disagree with people in life without attacking them and without trying to slander their character. But to say that Joe Bob doesn't understand horror is absolutely ridiculous. Next one down, clears his throat in preparation to say, okay, boomer. And it's just snarky. It's mean-spirited. Snarkiness. They're trying to belittle him, saying he's a boomer who just doesn't understand today's generation, which I don't think's true either. Sure, he's a man from a different time and place, but he seems to be pretty relevant and pretty current for his time. I mean, people don't petition and essentially beg online for someone like Joe Bob, a reviewer, a critic, an entertainer like Joe Bob, to come back out of retirement or to come back from wherever he was to do a show because he's irrelevant. Okay, so calling him a boomer and trying to, just trying to belittle him essentially, I think is, it's uncalled for and pretty mean-spirited. So, almost like someone who has made his name on the horror genre really doesn't understand its history at all. So your problem is that people are reading this and they're interpreting it through their angry, politicalized filter. And so they want to attack him immediately. They want to throw him under the bus immediately. Instead of taking time to stop and just think about what's his meaning behind this? Who is the person saying these things? What's his meaning behind it? Is there more than one way to interpret this? Why not say something like, can you elaborate more on your point? I mean, this sounds interesting. It could be a good conversation. Can you be more specific about what you're talking about? But they don't. They just attack and they belittle. It's just not cool, man. I just don't understand why people do this sort of thing. Next, I'd respond constructively, but I honestly don't have any idea where to begin with this ridiculous statement. So the drama is just palpable. I mean, there's a million ways that you could ask Joe Bob to clarify his feelings on this. Why would you just go with your first interpretation that makes you upset? Why wouldn't you try to see it a few different ways? It's juvenile. Next, have fun getting torn to pieces for this very untrue statement. I don't think it's untrue. I think you just misunderstood it. You know? I think you misunderstood it. And I think you're just sitting back, rubbing your hands together, just waiting for drama, because that's what people love on social media, right? Drama. Next, have you ever watched any movie ever? Are you going to call Star Wars apolitical too? Or maybe Star Trek? How about The Exorcist, Friday the 13th, Silence of the Lambs, etc.? I'm a child of the late 70s and 80s, and all those movies had political undertones. Yeah, no shit. No shit. Joe Bob's not saying that they don't have political undertones. He's not saying that they don't exist, that they haven't ever existed, and that they didn't exist after those times. You're not understanding what he's saying. You're having a visceral reaction because you interpreted it wrong, and you're lashing out. Okay? Next, I don't want to be told how to watch a movie, Joe Bob Briggs. I want to be told how to watch a movie by Joe Bob Briggs. That's just a snarky comment, basically just saying, he's a hypocrite because he doesn't want directors to tell him how to view the content of the movie, but he's telling us how to, and that's not what he's doing. All right? It's not what he's doing at all. Next batch. Gee, a guy who rates movies by how many boobs are in them has a problem with women that have thoughts. Imagine that. This is such an ignorant statement, honestly. I mean, yeah, Joe Bob has, a particular brand of the way that he presents his show, which is, pretty laid back and open, I mean, he likes to talk about, the pulp aspects of these movies, sexploitation, gore, blood, I mean, have you ever seen his show? Yeah, he talks about boobs. So what? So do I in my show. It's part of the genre. And he's not making a sexist statement here, because you're seeing it through your own filter. You're seeing it through your own SJW filter or whatever it is, your feminist filter, and you're saying, because he's sexist, he hates movies that have feminist messages in it, and that's not what he's saying at all. You're projecting your own political feminist viewpoints onto Joe Bob. And that's unfair. And you're trying to paint him out to be a sexist in a very backhanded way. And it's very cowardly to do on Twitter. Next, translated. Black actors should not be main characters or survivors in horror movies. So he said, translated in quotations, black actors should not be main characters or survivors in horror movies, unquote. Joe Bob is not saying black actors should not be main characters or survivors in horror movies at all. This is such a slanderous, mean-spirited statement saying, first we had a feminist say that he's sexist, and now we have a race baiter saying that he is racist, because the way he's interpreting that, Joe Bob's tweet, is that he's a racist because he doesn't want some politicized director, writer making movies about black people, or making, black statements, or giving commentary on how people of color are oppressed and putting it into a horror movie. Joe Bob's not saying that. He's not saying that at all. But it's just become such a thing in our culture that it's become tiresome. So it's not about specific groups, marginalized groups, or minorities. It's not about a specific group of people, women or black people, or what your sexual orientation is, or anything like that. It's not what he's saying at all. And it's really unfair to put that kind of statement on a man you don't even know personally. Next, having watched your show when I was 10 and examining the general tenure of your film criticism, I can say that it surprises me that the depth of films you watch is missed by you. Essentially he's saying that he's been watching Joe Bob for all these years and he thinks he's stupid, so this doesn't surprise him at all. Why are you a fan of him if you, for all these years, for all these decades, why are you a fan of Joe Bob if you're just going to end up calling him stupid on Twitter? Ugh. It's nauseating. It's toxic, you know? But I feel like I want to point out these toxic tweets, because I feel like he deserves to be defended, and these people are out of their mind. Next, I'd like to introduce you to the films of John Carpenter and George A. Romero. Apparently, you've never seen them. I mean, can you make a tweet that's just more ham-fisted on the nose? I mean, this is such a dumb reply. He obviously has seen these movies, and he understands the political context of those movies. All right? You didn't take 5 minutes to think about it before you responded. You just saw a chance to jump on the Twitter, on Twitter and huck pile on and, try to besmirch a person's reputation because you have some personal political feelings that you feel like he contradicted, It's just really not fair at all. I'd like to see it like these people try to have a conversation with them face to face. Then we get a little bit more colorful with some GIFs. This guy says, "Truly the worst take on horror history I've ever read. Congratulations on having such remarkable critical faculties." And the guy below him says, "Why not just say, I don't understand metaphors, even really obvious ones. It's fewer characters." Well, he does understand metaphors, okay? We all do. Most of us do. Apparently you don't understand the simple context of this tweet because you didn't take 5 minutes to think about it. I mean, are these snarky, mean-spirited comments really warranted? I mean, it just seems like really unfair to just attack a person without even trying to get into a conversation. But that's Twitter, I guess. The other person says, "Bro, you just posted cringe. Give me a break." You know what I mean? Joe Bob, one of the biggest reasons why he's so beloved by everybody is because he speaks his mind, because he has opinions. Sure, they may not be the most popular one with you or me or whenever. He goes on a rant about something, or he makes his mind known. But the beautiful thing about Joe Bob is he has a true, sincere love for movies, and he has the guts to speak his mind, and he has a creative mind, and he does it in a creative way that's fun for all of us to digest and make us think. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing if it makes you think and ponder a different angle, a different aspect of these movies that we all know and love. So essentially, these people are calling him dumb. Not cool, not cool. Give me a break. I don't believe this for a second. You just say movies back then were apolitical because you agree with the politics. Now that times have changed, you're angry. The thing is that that's essentially what they're saying is because you're a white cis male. All right, a white straight male, that back in the day the politics were in his favor, so he just never even recognized that there were politics in it. But now that things have changed, and the left liberals are pushing this narrative, and they're getting some mainstream push behind it. Now he's upset, and now he hates political messages and horror movies, and that's just childish. And I don't believe that to be true for 1 second. What we're talking about is the way that, these filmmakers present their ideas, and instead of letting the message be told through the story and letting the viewer figure it out, they're serving it up right in your face. Because what, do you think we're too stupid to be able to understand a metaphor or the subtext of a story? They don't want to be subtle. They want to beat you over the head with it. Horror has always been political. All the people going yes and thank you to this are really just saying, I don't like it when horror movies make me look like the bad guy. So this person is saying essentially the same thing as that first one, but he's broadening it to everybody who agrees with Joe Bob, saying, oh, because we were the mainstream before and now, things are more diverse and this, left politics are being pushed into everything, whether we like it or not, then we're just pissed off because we're the bad guys and we just couldn't see it before. Well, you know what I could say to that, dude? Fuck you. And fuck your opinion, because that's rude, and you're just painting a whole group of people with a broad brush to make your stupid, ignorant political point. And yeah, fuck that. That's bullshit. Seriously, what? You're a horror icon? But this is both a bad take and a false one. Horror has always been the most political. You just haven't seen it because it's been your politics. They're just backing up what these last two people have said. That Joe Bob's blind to it because Joe Bob has always believed in conservative politics or something. And so therefore it never bothered him before. But now that things are changing, to a different sort of narrative, that he is freaking out about it. And that's just bullshit. I don't see that in his statement at all. This is all coming off of one tweet criticizing the way that people are marketing horror movies nowadays. I bet you're the sort of person who thinks Star Wars wasn't political until episode 8. I'm sure Joe Bob doesn't think that. Everybody knows that there's a political story. There's a lot of subtext to Star Wars in all the movies, especially in the prequels. Tons of politics in there. And honestly, George Lucas kind of annoyed the shit out of me with it. Where are we at? So there's another page of these. It's toxic. I don't want to go on to the next one, but then Felissa Rose, star of Sleepaway Camp, she comes out to defend him. She says, I completely agree with you, Joe Bob. During that time, most directors really want the story to shine through and give the audience a great escape from reality. Bravo for you being our fantastic and most knowledgeable movie guide. We love you, heart, heart. Absolutely. She gets it. If you ever met Felissa Rose or talked to her, you understand that she has a sort of way about her and an understanding about life that, looking at things with a positive lens makes a huge difference. And to be giving and caring and loving towards people, which she definitely is. She's a very giving, kind person. It makes total sense that she would say this. She's such good friends with Joe Bob, and I'm sure it upsets her to see her friend being attacked. But she's absolutely right. They just want to make the story and have the story shine through, and the subtext is subtext for a reason. If they wanted to make a political statement and dress it up with zombies, then so be it, but it wasn't all in your face. Because life is about enjoying things. It's not about being militant and bashing people over the head with their political propaganda. She goes on to, I think she adds something else here. Let me see. Someone here, okay, so Replicant 1981 says, these people criticizing at the real Joe Bob obviously didn't comprehend what he was saying. The directors of that time put the story first and worked in undertones if it suited the story. Now stories are written the other way around with the message forced in. Yes, absolutely, that's the point. And I tell you what, it's a fucking buzzkill. And the average normal Joe horror fan who goes to see a horror movie who's getting constantly beat over the head with political axe grinding is fucking it's tiresome, and it takes the enjoyment out of it. And believe me, those movies are not going to stand the test of time. They're gonna look ridiculous, and they'll be like, we'll be thinking about back to a time of movies, a film when movies were being made and being very just ridiculously annoying with how they market these projects. But she says, thank you and exactly. It's so easy to just twist it around and make it into a problem. Can we watch the films we love without there being this kind of arguing? Joe Bob has done a world of good. This community is fierce. Just stop before you attack. Yes, just stop and think about his point of view and think about maybe this isn't a direct message to you to attack your personal political feelings on anything. You know what I mean? You could take one look at Joe Bob and tell he's not the kind of person who wants to alienate half his fan base or a third of his fan base or any one person. He kind of loves everybody and the little mutant family that we have, you know? And she's just, you know, she's coming to the rescue here with this comment just saying, look, we don't have to twist everything around to make, you know, a big drama and to attack somebody and kick them when they're down just because we can. We can just hang back, relax, and enjoy these movies. And she's absolutely right, and that's why I love Felissa Rose. She's fantastic. Really enjoyed interviewing her. She's a very giving, kind of person. And then, of course, Diana Prince, Darcy the Mail Goer, rather, she had to jump in and defend Joe. I'm sure she had a small panic attack when she saw what was happening to Joe Bob here, when she saw he was getting attacked, which is not, see, this is the thing, is like this sort of thread in Twitter is not the common thing amongst us horror fans, and especially with Joe Bob, because we all 99.999% love him and his way of doing things. And so seeing a lot of these messages pop up, I'm sure panicked her a little bit, and she wanted to jump out and come to his aid and say, hey, you know, this is what she stated. When this tweet first popped up, I almost posted a Romero gift and reply. Did not expect folks to get so heated up about it, though. He was just trying to say that he feels back then story came first and understanding political messages wasn't essential to the enjoyment of these movies. And she's right, too. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people probably watched Night of the Living Dead 100 times and never realized that there was a subtext there. But to some of us who look for the subtext can see that, or we read the articles and we know that it's a story about some political message that George Romero wanted to talk about. It's a metaphor, but a lot of people don't care. All right? Then she continues to say, whereas now he feels the message is often the main point and the horror elements are secondary. He was discussing the entertainment factor, not artistic merit. Whether you agree or not, though, it's just an opinion, and trust me, I disagree with him quite often. Yet some of the comments I've been seeing are just pointlessly evil. If you like political commentary to be front and center in your horror, that's awesome. Enjoy. But don't be so mean just because a dude said he just wants to see heads explode, please. And that really sums it up perfectly. Is that why can't you just let the man have his opinions? Why do you have to turn it into a Twitter attack? You know, why do you have to try to besmirch his reputation? Put him down, you know? Make him feel bad. Not everybody needs to be put in their place just because you feel like they didn't learn the lesson that you've learned or whatever. And I completely agree with her 100% about his intent on that message. And people will look for anything to attack somebody on Twitter for political reasons, or just because they feel like they deserve it. And once that blood gets in the water, it's a shark attack. And you know, Joe Bob, watched what happened, and Joe Bob handled it like a pro, like the pro that he is, and didn't really say a whole lot. He didn't try to defend himself, really. I mean, he did say a few things. Let's take a look. He, explained himself a little bit. He said, I knew most of them, and if they had political point of view, he's speaking about the creators behind these movies. I knew most of them, and if they had political point of views, it was subconsciously embedded. They were interested in story. Not one of them ever said, I'm making this movie to bring new perspectives. They never made extravagant claims for horror. And I think it's more clever when you make a movie. This is my personal opinion speaking here. It's more clever when you make a movie that slips in a message and the subtext and the shadow behind it than just smashing you over the head with it. And that's what Joe Bob's saying here. I'm essentially agreeing with him. And then, things continue to get heated up, and eventually he just ended the whole thing with just saying, happy to see this much passion over horror history. Because of course, horror films can be political, just pointing out my preference for keeping it as subtext. And B, I believe everyone should make their movie. Let every voice speak loudly, especially at Thanksgiving, a time of inclusion. And that just goes to show you why Joe Bob is such a class act, dude. And we all knew this already. Most of us anyway. I'm a huge Joe Bob fan, and I'm glad he's back in my life. I was watching Joe Bob when I was a kid, when he would pop up on TV late at nights, watching shitty movies. And I probably wouldn't have this YouTube channel or this podcast if I wasn't influenced by that at an early age. And I'm so glad he's back doing stuff on Shudder, doing commentary on Shudder. And I really think that he's fucking badass and doesn't deserve this sort of lashing out, this sort of attacks on Twitter. And but in true fashion, because he's too strong, he'll rise above and continue to speak his mind, I'm sure, and never apologize for himself. And I'm looking forward to this Christmas and the next show. I think it's called The Red Christmas or something like that. I'll be watching with bated breath for sure. And essentially, that's just my opinion on the whole debacle. I'm a huge Joe Bob fan, always will be, and you'd have to try really hard to alienate me. And I would just say this to you, if I called you out on your tweets, that it's not personal. I just happen to find it objectionable in the way that you approach criticizing him. Somebody who's given so much to the horror community, and to maybe just kind of relax and chill out a little bit, maybe leave some of your political leanings aside. And if you want to debate him on it, and make try making a intelligent statement and seeing if he'll respond. And I'm sure he will if it's smart enough, if it's interesting enough. I'm sure he would answer you, and I'm sure this is probably going to come up. This whole thing is going to come up in his next segments that he does for Shudder. So that's all, guys. I just want to say, chill out and let's all be horror fans. Let's all be part of the mutant family. We all represent our little slice of reality, but we all come together to form a big, loving horror fan pie, if you will. And we deserve better as a community. We don't need to have this sort of negativity just because we can. All right? So that's my opinion. Until next time, guys, stay awesome, stay irrated. Cheers. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot of great content coming for you this year. We've got reviews for movies, comics, and more. And of course, we will always have fan commentaries for the movies you love. Lots of talk about horror and just mainstream pop culture in general. And probably some Star Wars stuff leading up to Rise of Skywalker. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. And yeah, become a fan of the channel. Let's hear what you want to see. Leave a comment below and just let me know what you think. Alright guys, talk to you later.